Welcome to our Excel VBA tutorial series. In this video, we will explore how to work with Excel objects, specifically the range, worksheet, and workbook objects in VBA. Excel VBA revolves around the manipulation of various objects, the most common among these being range, worksheet, and workbook. They are the core components when interacting with Excel using VBA. Let's start with range objects. A range object represents a cell, a row, a column, or a selection of cells containing one or more contiguous blocks of cells. First, let's see an example of how to manipulate a range object. You can find this code in the video description section below. I have put a break on each line of the code to show how each one works. The first line of code is instructing Excel to select a range of cells, specifically A1, B2, in Sheet 1. This line of code can be broken down into a few parts. This workbook refers to the workbook where the code is running. Worksheets Sheet 1 specifies the worksheet we want to work with, which is Sheet 1. Range A1, B2 is the range of cells we're targeting. Lastly, select is the action we're applying to that range. This comes in handy when you want to apply an action, like formatting or inputting data, to multiple cells simultaneously. Let's run this line of code and see the effect in our worksheet. As you can see, the cells A1, A2, B1, and B2 have been selected as expected. After selecting the range, let's now write values to specific cells. Here we are targeting cell A1 and A2 and writing the words hello and world respectively. Let's run these lines of code. As you can see, our script wrote hello in cell A1 and world in cell A2. You could use this same method to write any data you'd like, such as results of calculations or text you'd like to be visible on the sheet. In fact, you can write multiple lines of code to fill in as many cells as you need. Now we're going to change the font of a specific range to bold. This is an example of how you can manipulate the formatting of cells using VBA. We target the range of cells A1 and A2 in Sheet 1 and change the Font.Bold property to true. Let's run this line of code and see the effect in our worksheet. In the next line, we're going to change the background color of the same range to red. We do this by using the Interior.Color property of the range object and assigning it a value representing the color red. The RGB function lets us specify the color we want. Alright, let's run this line of code and see the color change in our Excel sheet. So, we've just learned how to change the background color of a specific range. In the same way, we can change the font color of our chosen range. For example, if we want to change the font color of the text in cells A1 and A2 to white, we could add the following line of code. Let's run this line and see the change in the worksheet. As you can see, not only can we change the fill color of cells, but also their font color. This can be extremely useful if you want to highlight certain cells based on specific conditions, or simply want to make your worksheet more visually appealing. Let's continue to our next line of code. We're moving on to working with worksheet objects. Here we add a new worksheet to the workbook. This line uses the Worksheets.Add method to create a new worksheet, and we immediately assign it the name NewSheet. Let's run this line and watch a new worksheet appear in our workbook. Now let's activate the worksheet we just created. This line selects the new sheet, so any subsequent actions will take place in this worksheet. Let's run this line of code. Next, we're going to write data to the new worksheet. We target the cell A1 in New Sheet and assign it the value Data in New Sheet. Let's run this line and see our text in cell A1. Let's now rename our new sheet to Renamed Sheet. It demonstrates how you can rename worksheets dynamically using VBA. Let's run this line and see the Worksheet tab name change. Having seen how we can work with range and worksheet objects, let's now shift our focus to another critical Excel object, the workbook. In Excel VBA, you have the ability to interact with other Excel files or workbooks. Now we're going to open an existing workbook, which can be extremely handy when you need to manipulate or retrieve data from other Excel files. You'll need to replace the path with the actual file path on your system in this line of code. This is a powerful feature because it enables you to access and process data across multiple files, which can be particularly useful in larger projects where data is spread across different sources. Let's go ahead and run this line. After we do so, you should see the new workbook open on your screen. This visual confirmation will help assure you that your code is effectively communicating with other Excel files. As you've observed, when we opened the workbook in the previous step, it automatically became the active workbook. This is the default behavior of Excel, but in a situation where you're working with multiple workbooks and you've navigated away from the workbook, this line of code will bring you right back to it. So let's run this line, and you should see that the workbook named Second Workbook is now the active window, demonstrating the utility of the Activate method in managing multiple workbooks in Excel VBA. Next, we are going to read data from the activated workbook. This line fetches the value from cell A1 in sheet 1 of the workbook named Second Workbook. Let's run this line. You won't see any changes, but the value is now stored in our VBA code. Now let's close the workbook without saving changes. This is especially useful when you are done extracting the data you need, and you don't want to modify the original workbook. Let's run this line and see the workbook close. On the other hand, if you want to save the changes that your VBA code has made to the workbook, you can set Save Changes to True. For instance, if your VBA code has performed important calculations or data manipulations, and you wish to keep these changes in the workbook, then Save Changes equals True ensures that when the workbook closes, all your changes are saved. With VBA, you can finely tune your data manipulation in Excel, ensuring data integrity where needed, and discarding unnecessary changes when appropriate. In a nutshell, this demonstrates the power and control VBA gives you over workbook operations. You can manipulate and extract data as you need, and yet leave the original data untouched. Lastly, we will write the data we fetched from the workbook named Your Second Workbook to cell A3 of the newly inserted worksheet. This line takes the value stored in the variable data and assigns it to the target cell. Let's execute this line and observe the value appearing in cell A3. And there we have it. We have covered some essential operations with Excel objects using VBA, like ranges, worksheets, and workbooks. Practice these concepts and see how you can automate your work in Excel. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe for more tutorials. Happy coding!